everybody. This is Ann Blau. I am doing hosting duties tonight, and my co-host is Ruth Bork. I'm a speech language pathologist and editor-in-chief of Airway Circle, and Ruth is an occupational therapist. This is my lovely co-host tonight. And as you can see, Renata is at a sleep symposium. She's at the Stanford Sleep Symposium, hearing some great lectures, which hopefully she'll report back to us on. I'd like to introduce our guest speakers tonight. Thank you everybody for coming. Tonight we have the pleasure of having Melanie Potock, who is a speech language pathologist, international speaker, and pediatric feeding expert. She's the co-author of the award-winning Raising a Healthy Happy Eater, the author of Responsive Feeding, as well as the children's book, You Are an Otter, the story of how kids become adventurous eaters, and more. Melanie's advice has been shared in television and print media, including the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, CNN, and Parents Magazine. Melanie is a mom who once had a picky eater. She's experienced firsthand the stress that parents feel when they are worried about their child's nutritional health. Fast forward to today, and you'll find Melanie blending her knowledge of feeding therapy with practical parenting strategies that help the entire family eat healthier. Whether you're raising a child who seems to be on the path to loving all kinds of healthy foods and you want to keep it that way, or seeking help for a picky eater to be able to enjoy more than chicken nuggets and fries, Coach Mel is here to guide you. For those who have not taken a course with Melanie, be sure to look into some of her master classes, as you will learn so much. Our topic for tonight is which cups support feeding development, and I'm happy to be able to introduce Melanie, and I will give you the floor. I look forward to a great conversation tonight.
Hi, Ann. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Good. Hi, Ruth. And hi, Renata. I know you're listening to a lecture at Stanford, but just wanted to say hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I'm just like grinning from ear to ear because I wish you could see my desk right now. Like I must have 30 cups.
Oh, really? Oh, good.
So
I'm glad because Ruth said to me, Ruth, go ahead.
I told Anne earlier when she was like, what should we ask? And I was like, she has a plethora of cups.
It's an illness that I have, this cup addiction. And the people at Target, they now know me, like that woman is always hanging out in that aisle. What is up with her? But now I've gotten to know all the employees there and they're like, oh, which cup should I use for my kid?
Well, I think that's what a lot of people feel when they go into a store and they're overwhelmed by all these cups that are marketed very well and they're packaged beautifully, and people just kind of gravitate, I think, towards the ones that look nice or the ones that their kids pick out. But I think the questions I'd like to know are when we're thinking about feeding development and skills that we're trying to establish in our children, what should we be looking for? The ones who don't have very much knowledge, or maybe even professionals who do have some knowledge and feel overwhelmed.
Yeah, I think, whether you're a parent or a professional or both, I certainly have a lot of SLPs who have brand new babies who reach out to me to ask these same questions. And it's not the kind of thing that I learned in graduate school. It took a lot of research and time to figure this out. And then, of course, what happens is then the cups change or a new one comes on the market, right? Or depending on how much they're being marketed, what becomes the most popular one. We can talk about that a little bit too. And I think before I scare everybody, the main thing to know is if you're using one of the cups that I'm telling you, don't use that, it's okay. It's going to be all right. To use the occasional hard spout sippy cup or a 360 cup, some of the ones I'm not a fan of, it's really not a big deal. The problem is that we rarely remember the word occasional, and it's really easy for a favorite cup to become a habit. And nowadays cups are cup holders are on the high chair tray, they're in the stroller, they're in the car seat. Like we bring cups everywhere. I've got my Coach Mel cup with me today. Like we're just used to this now. And sure enough, just like I grabbed for my favorite, we have to be careful that we're not grabbing one that, when we consider intensity, duration, and frequency of use, might influence the child's facial development. So that's what we're here to talk about today.
Great. Would you like to start out by talking a little bit about some of the skills that we're expecting and how that factors into the decision of which cup we would consider?
Absolutely. Yeah. So when we're thinking about babies and when they're first born, they have a reflex that's known as the suckle reflex. And the way babies learn a lot of skills is through a reflex. And then once they can pay attention to the reflex, then they start to learn how to do it on their own. And then it's amazing, the reflex starts to integrate into our nervous system because it's not really necessary to be reflexive anymore because we can do it purposefully. Well, when babies move from this reflexive suckle pattern to a true sucking pattern, and I don't think I'll go into all the details on that, but what happens is it starts to morph into a suck, and then right at about 1 year of age, that suck should mature into what we call a mature swallow pattern. So what's the difference, right? A suckle pattern is where I want you to envision, if you've ever seen baby little kittens, and if you've ever seen them nursing on mommy, they actually have their tongue under mommy's nipple and they're going forward, back, forward, back. Well, babies who are breastfeeding have a very similar motion. It's anterior, posterior, forward, back. And that's actually what helps strip the milk from the breast. So that forward, backward motion is great and purposeful at first, but then it needs to shift to more of a sucking pattern. And then the sucking pattern, when we start solids, begins to slowly morph into a mature swallow pattern. And a mature swallow pattern is where, let me show you, we can take a sip of water. The tip of our tongue goes to that spot right above our top teeth. It's called your alveolar ridge, where you make a D or a T sound. And it presses there, and the tongue tip presses there, and then the rest of the tongue sort of scoops up into the roof of the mouth and sends the water down your throat. So it should go pretty easily. No problem. But if you still have an immature swallow pattern, then what happens is when you go to take a sip, the water will actually squirt out of your mouth. And that goes along with the tongue thrust reflex. And these two are very intimately related. So what does all this mean when it comes to cups? Is that breastfeeding is awesome. Do that as long as you can, if you can. Bottles encourage more of a suckling pattern where the tongue gets underneath and it acts a little bit differently than on the breast. And we begin to go from suckling to sucking, but the tongue is held down by the bottle nipple. That's why we want to make sure that babies are weaned off a bottle at about the first birthday. Then we have to ask ourselves about cups. Well, back in the 80s, this engineer came up with an idea on how to save his carpets. And he was tired of his kids spilling juice all over the carpet. So he invented a sippy cup, a hard spout sippy cup that the child can tip over and nothing will come out. They can suck on it just like a bottle. As a matter of fact, I don't know how well everybody can see, but when you look at these two, the hard spout is actually bigger and longer than a bottle. It's even worse. If you want to, I hate to use that word, but it's going to hold that tongue down. It's going to keep it down, and you're not going to develop that mature swallow pattern if you're using this with a lot of frequency, a lot of intensity, long durations of time. And that's my point. A lot of kids carry these with them everywhere they go. All right, so what do we want to do instead to help that child develop a mature swallow pattern? Is it just that we want to go to, say, a straw cup? Sort of. But if you do, you got to be careful because the straw is going to hold the tongue down too. So we can talk about it in just a little bit, but we'll actually trim the straw down a little bit so that the tip of the tongue can rise up to that D or T spot, the alveolar ridge, and make that beautiful peristaltic wave that's known as the mature swallow pattern. And summary of all of that, who the heck cares? Like, why do we need a mature swallow pattern? Because if you don't develop that pattern, you can actually, it will influence the way your hard palate is shaped. You need your tongue to rise up into the hard palate in order to shape the palate into this beautiful sort of subtle dome shape rather than a high palatal vault. Because that vault, if it gets too high, pushes up into the sinuses and under the nose here, pushes up and creates airway issues. And that's what Airway Circle is all about.
I would like to ask just a quick question. So there are parents who are still using a bottle as they transition to a cup. Does that delay the acquisition of the age-appropriate correct swallow pattern? Because you're using that immature suck pattern, and then you're also trying to advance to that more mature suck. Yeah.
It could. It depends on intensity, duration, and frequency. And that's why this is so hard to measure. But in my I can't believe this, almost 30 years of experience doing this, I can say that when I see a toddler who is on a bottle frequently and is still using that anterior posterior movement with their tongue, that tongue thrusting pattern, they tend to be not as advanced in their motor skills. And that in turn starts to impact the foods they'll eat as well, because they don't have the skill for more advanced foods. If it were someone who had a child having, well, for example, I have a client who has a very rare syndrome. She's 9 years old. And the only way she can take her medicine is to drink it from a bottle in the evening. But it's about 3 ounces. It's super quick. It's not impacting anything because it isn't that duration, frequency, intensity that we're concerned about just isn't there. So I don't have a clear-cut answer for you, except to say, I would do everything I could to help a child wean off a bottle in an age-appropriate way. I have a video course on my website called Bye Bye Bottles just for that purpose, for parents and professionals. Weaning off a bottle isn't that hard. It's just scary. That's all. It's especially scary for the parents.
Yes, I can definitely imagine. And it becomes a comfort thing too. So where are we going, as we're trying to wean that bottle and introduce a cup? What should we be looking for in terms of maybe texture or density or shape or the volume that a cup can hold, I guess, as we start out?
Yeah, all great questions. Let's start out with an easy peasy cup. I think a lot of listeners are familiar with this one. The easy peasy cup is, you can find it at easypeasyfun.com. Full disclosure, I'm an affiliate. If anybody wants a discount code, I'm happy to send it to them. But the reason why I'm sharing it with you is because it answers your question right off the bat. So with this particular cup, it comes in several sizes. This particular one also includes a straw. So that brings us to, do we start with an open cup or do we start with a straw cup? Now, some therapists prefer an open cup. I personally prefer a straw cup. Why is that? Because an open cup is awesome to introduce at 6 months of age. You have to be careful that it fits the child's hands, that the circumference is just right for their little mouth. We can talk more about that in a second. But they won't master this to close to 18 months of age, where you can really feel comfortable and not worry about spills. But a 6-month-old can master straw drinking literally in a day, using my 10 steps to straw drinking. So if anybody is curious about that, I have a whole reel on that on my Instagram. And I also have a free download for you at melaniepotock.com. Just click on the free downloads and you'll see my 10 steps to straw drinking. It's also in 2 of my books as well. So I start with straw drinking. And then what I look for, Anne, is I look for a cup, like the Easy Peasy one, that is going to have a fairly short straw, or one that I can retract or trim and make short, and that is going to hold a fairly small amount, and the straw isn't going to be too wide. Because if it's too wide, like say a Starbucks straw, or a McDonald's straw, you know, those are pretty wide. The reason why they're so wide is you get more drink faster, you get fluid faster, and you drink it all gone and you order another one. I mean, it's just marketing. These straws are intended for smaller mouths to deliver a smaller bolus or amount in the mouth for more comfortable and safe swallowing. So there's a variety of cups out there like this, which I'm happy to show you. Do you want me to go ahead and show you some straw cups
please.
now? Okay.
Yes.
So just remember, if you go to easypeasyfun.com, you can get different sizes of these. And here's my big tip for everybody. It's not so much about age. I know we really get hung up on age when we're looking at the baby aisle, like, oh, this says it's for 4 to 6 months. This says it's for 7 to 9 months, right? That's just marketing. It's a guideline. It's a general guideline. Rather than getting too focused on age, think about skill. So if I've got a 10-month-old who still doesn't know how to drink from a straw, I'm still going to go with a relatively small cup to teach open cup drinking. And I'm also going to go with a fairly similar straw system as well as to how I would teach a 6-month-old. Now, the thing about a 6-month-old is they're not necessarily going to have this trunk stability to be able to hold their cup really still and bring it up to their mouth for straw drinking. You might have to help them a little bit, but they'll master it by 7.5 months. So start early. With what you're looking for in a straw cup is you want a flexible straw. That's incredibly important for these itty bitties. So from 6 months all the way up to about a year, unless they're an older toddler who is strapped into their high chair. You could have a plastic straw if you wanted, something like in a typical take and toss cup. But those kids have to be seated and strapped in, because if you're toddling around with this in your mouth, it's one of the #1 reasons that kids end up in the emergency room for mouth injuries, is because of a hard plastic straw or a hard spout sippy cup that they're toddling around with, because kids toddle and fall and do face plants, or a pacifier or a bottle with a plastic rim. So something that's made out of silicone is ideal in terms of safety. A couple other cups that are similar. I really like this little Grabbies cup, Grabbies. I like it because it's clear. So from a therapy perspective, I can see what's happening inside. It also has a removable top so that you can use this as an open cup as well. One of the really great thing though about Dawn Winkleman's invention, you know, she's the therapist at Easy Peasy, is that her cups, it's hard to see, but they're actually sloped inside so that the kids don't have to tilt too far back and open that airway. So they're really designed for safe swallowing. So I especially love this one for that reason. And I wish you all could feel it too, because it's weighted. And so it's nice, you know, I want that cup to be, the kids to be aware of it in their hands. That's why sometimes I'll even just use a baby food jar, honestly, to teach open cup drinking, because it's heavy. It's a lot of parents prefer that over plastic. They prefer glass, and they honestly don't break very easily. And if they do, it's a baby food jar. It's no big deal. So we can try the Easy Peasy. And then for kind of your more a brand that you might be familiar with, a lot of people are familiar with, Munchkin. They have just your basic splash cup where you can see inside. I include a flexible straw on that. So there's a variety out there. And of course, last but not least, let's talk about this for a second. Everybody who's a therapist knows about a honey bear. I want to caution you though about these. I love a good honey bear, but I'm really experienced and skilled at squeezing his bare tummy and squirting into the child's mouth. When parents first get a hold of these, make sure they're really practicing and they're trying it in their own mouth and they're practicing over the sink, because you can squirt a lot of liquid down a kid's airway if you're not careful with this. So I like to get the smaller ones. I have them on my Amazon store, and then I add my own silicone straw. So the smaller one is a little bit harder to deliver a lot of liquid. So honey bear is a good option too. What else can I answer for you? Because I could just go on all day.
Sorry, Ruth, you go ahead.
Will you tell us about the length of the straws? While you're
Yeah,
that's a good.
we could also add my Amazon shop to the chat. You know, it's just Melanie Potock Amazon shop or my Munchbug Amazon shop. It'll pop right up. But the straws themselves, like the silicone straws, you can order 10 of these from talktools.com. I also have them on my Amazon shop, and then I just cut them down to fit any cup that I happen to be using. I don't know how well you guys can see here, but the beautiful thing about these silicone straws is they're wider on the outside and really narrow on the inside. So they deliver a very small bolus, yet the kids still have something nice and firm to provide some lip rounding. So I especially like these.
Like, how far out of the cup do you want that straw?
Oh, okay. Great question. So let's talk about that. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is also a Munchkin weighted cup, but I've trimmed off the valve. So weighted cups are fantastic as a first cup because when you tilt them, the weight helps to drop any liquid, no matter how full it is or isn't full. The only issue is that something like a Munchkin has a valve inside the straw. And we don't want that because the valve makes it a little bit harder to suck, and it gets kids into that suckling pattern in order to drop the liquid. So I just take my scissors and really carefully, it's like cutting bangs, like don't cut off too much. You cannot glue it back on, okay? You want to just look for the little valve inside. You can't miss it. And you just slice right across it. And then you've got the perfect length. So as Ruth was asking, what is the perfect length? My rule is the tip of the straw goes to the tip of the tongue when it's resting inside your mouth. So I'm going to get a little close to my camera here. See my tongue? That straw barely reaches over my teeth and just touches the tip of my tongue as it's resting behind my teeth, or gum line if I were a baby. Tip of the straw to the tip of the tongue. Why? Because that allows the baby to suck, yet the tip of the tongue can rise up to begin to develop that mature swallow pattern. So it's a great way of encouraging that pattern to happen.
I'll just say my question was, this is more of a professional question. If there is a child who has dysphagia and is in need of a liquid that is thickened, can those still be drawn up through those straws?
That is a great question. That is decided on a case-by-case basis because we have to decide what we saw during the assessment. We have to consider the tone of the child and the trunk stability, and also how well they could stabilize their own cup before we decide what cup we might use for any sort of thickened liquid. So in a lot of cases, yes, if it's nectar thick, if it's just a little bit thick, we can use some of these cups, but they're still all going to have a different flow rate depending on that child's skill. So I never recommend a specific cup for a certain thickness of liquid, because the deciding factor is the skill of that individual child and the suction that they can create. And that can change week to week, as can their skill, which may also influence whether or not they're aspirating, etc. So I don't have a definitive answer for you, and I must get that question, I would say at least 5 times a week on my DMs and Instagram. And I never provide an answer because it's up to the individual SLP, probably, maybe an OT who did the video swallow, and the team that's working with that child to make that decision. So I'm glad you asked it.
Okay, no, thank you. Something just came to mind now. I remember this was probably quite a few months ago. My sister was starting cup drinking with my niece, and I should clarify, it was straw drinking. And she said to me, she keeps kind of choking or clearing her throat with the straw. I work mostly with the adult population, so I went to my pediatric feeding therapist, and they had recommended to cut down the straw to a smaller size as you're demonstrating. So is that a sign that parents should look for, perhaps, if their child is struggling with that straw cup?
Yeah, it's a little counterintuitive. I have a lot of posts about this and reels on my Instagram. I actually just had somebody ask me that question today, is why does my kid, first he was doing okay, but now he's kind of coughing on it. And sometimes he even spits some of it out afterwards. Like, what happened? Well, what happened is he got stronger. And that gets back to what we just discussed, where child's skill will change from week to week. So if we're already offering a cup that has a valve and the child's learning to suckle underneath, which is not what we want, and then they get stronger, then they start to pull out way too much liquid and the flow is too fast and they start to cough and sputter, or they get so much in their mouth that because they still have a little bit of a tongue thrust, they actually spit it right out. So what do we do about that? Well, first question I always have for those parents is, have you cut off the valve? Go ahead and cut that off, and then make sure it's short enough. Because, and to get back to Ruth's question, we really want the child's, unlike this, let me show you, unlike this straw that's too long, this is going to go way too far in my mouth. And this one not only is going to go to the tip of my tongue, but it's going to create better lip closure and a little bit of stability for my chin. Here, look, because I can press against the dome. As a matter of fact, show you a little trick. This is the Lola cup, same idea. Now this one, it does not have a valve. You could trim it a little bit, but most kids won't come in this deep because of the way it's shaped. They hold it and tend to put it right about here. So as long as you're seeing some straw sticking out of the child's mouth, you don't have to trim this one, but you could if you wanted. So with the Lola cup, what I do is if I have a child who still has that tongue thrusting pattern that we typically see at about 6 months of age, but it should start to go away very slowly, roughly by 9 months, until it morphs into that mature swallow pattern we talked about. Well, here's a trick. If you got a kid who's really doing that, not uncommon with, say, a child with Down syndrome, have them flip the cup around and drink from it this way. Now you've got something to rest their chin on so they can't thrust their chin, which means it's hard to thrust your tongue, because wherever your chin goes, your tongue goes. And that's another reason why I like to keep this one a little bit long. They can really start to retract their tongue. So try it yourself. Get a domed cup. You could do the same thing with, you could do it with a Think Baby as well, but with the little protrusion they have here to help kids close it, it doesn't work quite as well, but it's kind of the same idea. But especially with the Lola Baby cup, it works really well. So if you got a kid who's still thrusting, use this cup and flip it around. Teach them to put their chin on the beak of the bird. So the little Lola bird.
That is a neat trick. I did not know that. Thank you.
You know what? It's like one of those things. You know how you do this as a therapist? You're working with a kid one day and you go, I wonder what would happen if, and years ago, I think it was like 15 years, well, maybe not. I was originally using like a Playtex cup before Lolo came out. And I just flipped it around, and I have used that strategy ever since. So that's why I often post about it. It's just one of those aha moments for me.
Right. And it still comes out, even if you flip it. It's not like you're.
It does. Yeah,
okay.
It does.
I'd like to, Ruth, would you like me to read the post in the chat, or did you want to? I know you also had a question about this topic, so I thought it might segue into that.
I was going to ask you, Melanie, can you mention core stability? Will you share with everyone your example on like sitting on a bar stool example? It's my favorite, and I feel like everyone can benefit from that. I use it often. So share,
Ruth,
please.
if I knew you were going to ask me this, I would have brought a martini glass because, I've been teaching this one course for 20 something years, and this is how this whole bar stool analogy started. And now it's all over the internet, and I'm absolutely thrilled that people are using it. But I would say it was an aha moment when I was having a martini in a bar one day. And I walked into the bar in my cute little dress and I'm feeling all good, right? And I don't have a bar stool here, so bear with me. I go to sit on the bar stool and I went to put my feet on the footrest that every bar stool has, and there's no footrest. And I'm kind of wobbling there, and it is the only seat in the house. So even though I'm 6 feet tall, my legs are pretty long. I still could not touch. I did not have any stability under my feet. And here I had just ordered a martini. And just for any of you who care, in case we go out and have a cocktail together, extra cold, extra olives up. Like that's my drink. Okay, vodka, not gin. All right. So I just want you to picture this. So I've got my martini. I'm trying to find something I can do. Okay. Let's see. I wish I had, here, we'll use the bear cup. When you have a martini, you have a stem that you hold on to. Yeah. And so there I am balancing, and it's filled to the top, and I'm trying to bring it right up to my lips and take a sip and put it down without spilling. And it really got me thinking that this is exactly what our kids go through when they don't have a footrest and they're first learning to try to drink or bring food up to their mouth, or, as I was mentioning earlier, bring a little cup up to their mouth for the first time. You've got to have your feet on something in order to stabilize your core. So on my Instagram Reels, I have a video of me on a bar stool, and I'm using a bottle of water there. I should really use a martini. But when I teach my courses, I always have an empty martini glass there, and we fill it up with water. And somebody from the audience comes and has to drink from the martini glass. And it's just so true. They all say, my abs are killing me because I'm trying to do this, because I'm trying so hard not to spill and to keep everything stable and take this lovely little sip, because we don't typically drink like that unless we're having a martini. So it's a first time experience, just like our kids are having a first time experience. So Ruth, you got to warn me next time. I would have brought a martini.
Sorry. Sorry, I had no clue. Well, when I took your class, I was the example. And so I had no warning either. So payback.
That's right. You were the example, weren't you? You had to drink out of the was it the martini glass?
Mm-hmm. And so I was pretty used to not getting my feet on the ground, but that kind of segues into a question that Kat had. And so she said, my child has a G tube and is 20 months, aspirates on thin liquids, so they thicken. He is low tone, learning to oral feed, and he's doing very well. He drinks with a straw well now, but he will not pick up his cups to drink. We've been practicing straw cups for 10 months, and I'm giving him every single sip all day. It's exhausting. Do you have any tips?
So I want to make sure you broke up there a little bit. It's that he can drink from the straw, but he won't pick up the cup himself to drink.
Yep. And they're using thickened liquids and low tone.
Yeah. I definitely have a tip. So what we're going to do is we're going to backward chain that skill. So for everybody listening, chaining is where you start with one step and then you teach the next step and the next one and the next one. You create a chain until you get to the task that you're trying to get to. If you want to backward chain it, you start at the end of the chain and you teach backwards. So what we're going to do is I would suggest seeing whether or not, of course, whichever cup would be okay with his thickened liquid, but I would take a look at either using a cup with handles. This is the Tum Tum cup, or if he does better, go ahead and use an Easy Peasy cup. So play around with handles or no handles. But let's just say that the easy peasy cup is the way you decide to go. What you're going to do is as you go to hand it to give him a sip, okay, you're going to start backward chaining. So we know he can do this skill. And then what you do is if he'll let you put his hand on the cup very gently, as long as he's accepting of it and he's very comfortable with it, then go ahead and put his hand on the cup, take yours away, and then have him hand the cup to you. So it would look like this. Give the cup to mommy, thank you. So it's very brief. So the hand, your hand is this one. He's holding on, you're holding on. I want you to let go for just a second and say, give the cup to mommy, and he's going to let go, right? But what do you have right there? You have 1 second of your little boy holding his own cup. Then what you do, don't go too fast. This might take a little bit every day to work on. Then what you do is you just start to move your hand a little bit. So he goes, now you have a little boy who's holding his cup for 2 seconds. Keep doing that. Slowly move your hand down until eventually it's down on the table or the high chair tray. This is his visual cue as to where it goes, and he'll go. And if you need to use your other hand to guide him a little bit, that's okay. But that's what you're working on. You're working on this to this. Now, once you have that, then you can start working on the other way, the forward chaining, which is bringing it up to his mouth. So, but start here. So I hope that helps. And if you have any more questions about it, you can always email me. Just remind me of the conversation at melanie@mymunchbug.com, and I'll try to walk you through some of the steps. Bottom line is, whenever you're thinking about how do I teach a skill, the answer lies in the next question, which is, what step is that kid missing? And what that kid is missing is the step of taking it out of his mouth. And we're going to work our way backwards. And your hand is slowly going to guide him to that until eventually he can now do this. And from there, you start to work on this. So backward chaining is magical.
That's fantastic. Thank you. That demonstration was very helpful. There is a question I'm also trying to check because we are also live on Facebook. And the question is about those who are biting on straws to prevent excess from being pulled up. The question is that an oral habit? And I think there are a lot of kids who will also bite on the straw, just they're holding it, they're distracted, and you just see them kind of nibbling on the straw. What might that be a result of? How can you still use the straw and discourage the child from doing that?
Well, you've got to take a look at what's happening before and what's happening after. And there can be so many different scenarios here. So I'm just going to mention a few. Let's say that we've got a kiddo who keeps biting on this, keeps biting on the straw, right? Sort of I'm just like chewing gum, just talking to you, taking a sip, chewing. Well, what's happening right before that is that he's taking a sip. So the step we have to teach is take a sip and put your cup down, and that will eliminate the biting. Do we want to try to figure out why he needs that oral input? Absolutely. That's kind of a side note. But if we just look at it from how do we stop that behavior, we want to substitute a different behavior for that. So if the child's doing this, chew, 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 we want to catch them at suck and give them something better to do with it. So in that case, what I would do is I would put some sort of coaster on the child on the table, or you could even use the little indentation in the high chair tray if you wanted, the little round one that everybody puts their cup in. Let's say it's this. And away from meal times, just to teach this skill, I would just work on taking a sip, and your cup goes here, and then reward, high five or have a few seconds of a game or whatever you want to do. You're going to treat it very much like it's a therapy setting where we're teaching a skill, just like stringing beads, same idea. So take a sip, put it down, high five. When you teach children something better to do with the cup rather than chewing on it, you can substitute the behavior slowly over time. Again, keep in mind, they might be chewing for a reason, that they need that oral input, in which case we're going to substitute some other oral motor tools like a Y-chew or a chewy tube to provide that input. Maybe they could wear it on as a necklace, or we could have it attached to the high chair tray and offer that as a substitution. Another trick, though, to help kids not chew on a straw is getting back to cut it down. Because let me see if I can grab one here. Here, let's use this one. So for example, on the Tum Tum, this is a fairly short straw that already comes with it. It's really hard to chew on the straw. It's too short. So, and make sure kids are bringing it to the front. If it's short enough, they can't really get into chewing it too much. Even more so with a dome-shaped cup, I'd probably use a dome-shaped with a child like that and take every opportunity for chewing on straws out of the picture until that habit fades away.
Thank you. I was actually going to ask about, what was I going to ask? When you are drinking from the straw, or maybe even an open cup, but a lot of, as myofunctional therapists, a lot of us are working with those who don't have a good lip seal. Yeah. What would be the ideal cup perhaps for really working on that and being able to create that lip seal to achieve that suction that's needed to extract the liquid?
Yeah, well, you know what, surprisingly, and every kid's different, so take me with a grain of salt. But if I have a child who isn't able to get a good lip seal, or their lip seal is really flat and I'm not getting that rounding, then I'm going to go to a wider straw. And I'm going to work my way back down to a skinny one, because that for a lot of kids is going to be easier. So I might go ahead, I'm trying to think of an example I would have in front of me. Well, here's a little bit of an unusual example. And this is the Contigo cup is more for kids about 2.5 and up. But if you look at it, it has a really wide spout. And you'd think I would be like, no, they cannot have this because we've got a sippy cup, right? But it's not quite the same. It's for an older child. It's pretty heavy. But when it comes to working on being able to get some good lip closure, it actually is just a straw. There's no valve in the Contigo cup. So, and it's nice and short. And if you look at it, it isn't very round. So I normally wouldn't recommend this for a younger child, but to teach lip rounding, you could use this. Another good example is, again, I would not recommend this typically, the bite and brace thermoses where you have to bite on them. I'm trying to think of the name, bear with me. It'll come to me in a sec. Oh, Nalgene. Nalgene has these. You actually have to bite on this soft spout in order to open it up and suck. But that cup I will use for therapeutic purposes only. I don't have it on my store. I don't recommend it in general, but I'll use it as a tool to help a child get better lip closure because it has such a wide straw and they're already bracing. And then what I do is I take a regular straw, much like the plastic one that I have in my own cup here, and I'll put it into the Nalgene spot all the way down to here and slowly help them learn to go from a wide mouth to a shorter mouth. And sometimes I've even taken a wine cork, drilled a hole in it, put my regular straw through it so that they could close on that and suck, and then slowly start to carve down the wine cork. So we always get really creative in therapy for a lot of kids who are just having trouble with some of our traditional strategies. The bottom line is what you're trying to create is a wider straw, or we might call it a short spout, a wider one for them to get good closure on, and then gradually making it smaller and smaller and smaller until eventually they can actually close around a straw. And sometimes a lip block, you can get those at Talk Tools that insert into the straw can be very helpful with that. But we've also already achieved that by cutting down the straw so close to the dome. So it's the same idea. So I hope that's helpful.
No, it is. Thank you. I'm glad you showed that thermos, because I was going to ask, once the child is a little bit older, say 3, 4, 5, and the parent is sending the child to school with a thermos, and even I guess advancing into older age, are we still looking for that shorter, more flexible straw?
Ideally, I'd like a short, flexible straw just because safety, right? But if you want to go with something like a Think Baby, you can take the handles off and then it just looks like a regular pop-up thermos for older kids. So this is a good option, and it does not have a valve, and it keeps things cold. There's a variety of stainless options like this on my Amazon store, but if we go back to the Contigo is still a pretty good choice for that 2.5-year-old and up. A child who I'm watching carefully doesn't have a tongue thrust, really knows how to suck appropriately, has a nice mature swallow pattern, but needs a little bit more of more substantial volume of liquid throughout the day. They need something to keep it cold. They need a handle. I really am fine with this particular cup for those reasons, but I reserve it for those older kids. So yeah, another good option though is the Fugo thermos by Thermos, the brand Thermos. This is another one. It's also called a Funtainer. So both of these are on my store as well. These are great choices for that. And you just mostly want to look to, not mostly, but you also want to look for a really easy open lid, because if the kids can't shut it themselves and they can't open it themselves, what's the point? So all of these meet that criteria for me.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to check the chat real quick. Ruth, do you have anything to add or ask?
Tammy just asked, what would you recommend for an older child with a tongue thrust?
In terms of a cup?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, depends on the age again. But if let me walk you through a couple options. If it's an older toddler, 2-year-old, then I would definitely use some sort of dome top and flip it around like we discussed. If it's more of a 3.5 to 4-year-old who might see this as too babyish of a cup, by the way, you can also remove the handles on this one as well. Look for those removable handles. I also really like the Cool Cat. The only thing about a Cool Cat, and it comes in different colors, is it does have a little valve in it, but in my experience for the older child, it's fairly flexible and soft. And so they don't get into that suckling tongue thrusting pattern, but you could easily trim it off. It's maybe 1/4 of an inch back. So you could easily trim it off and they'd still have enough straw. So if you did that, they've got a little bit of surface here to brace their chin against, and it's going to help stabilize the chin and hopefully pull that tongue back. But for a significant tongue thrusting pattern, as we all know, that child probably needs to see an orofacial myologist to help with that, because there's so many concomitant factors that come into play when it comes to tongue thrusting.
This is just a question, a curious question I have. Do these companies indicate on their labels that there's a valve in the straw? Is that something they have to?
I don't know if they have to, but they typically will say if there's a valve on the back, or you can open it up and without even getting into the cup, just pull out the instructions and you'll see if it has special instructions to clean it. It's likely because there's a valve. Some valves are deep inside the cup too. They're in the straw that goes down into the cup, but I'm not showing you any of those today. So also let me know if you want to talk about the 360 cup, because I bet we'll get that question.
That was on my list. And the other one was with the open cups, there are some that have a little bit of a cutout on one side, so it's shorter. I also wanted to know if you can mention that and why that might be helpful for a developing child or why it might be a hindrance. And or let me just throw one last one. If there's any cup you would say, I would definitely recommend steering clear from this one.
Oh, okay. I'm just going to use the Easy Peasy cup simply because it's clear so you can see. And I have a really big nose, so this is a perfect way to demonstrate. So this is meant for a child, right? And if they're first learning how to drink and the liquid is fairly low, then when they go to tip, it hits their nose. And then they get into this and they start to open their airway. That's why a nosy cup, which is a therapeutic cup that has a cutout right here. This whole section is cut out. It's the space for the nose. But let me give you a couple tips around that. Rather than letting the liquid, or I use puree a lot when I'm teaching open cup drinking because it's easier to manage, for it to go down, I really prefer that I keep the cup fairly full. And the kids are learning how to just barely tilt it because they're much more likely when they tilt up to tilt it back down when it's full. But when they really have to tip it, that's when you start to get into the sippy cup syndrome where they think they can just do this, right? So a nosy cup, you can make that out of a paper cup if you want. Just cut out a big U shape on the other side, and you can definitely do that. In terms of cups that I definitely wouldn't recommend, I don't want to call out any brands just because I want to be respectful that these are people's businesses. The ones I would recommend are always on my Amazon store. The ones I wouldn't recommend are not. But I will talk a little bit about these Miracle 360 cups because there are several brands. And the only reason I use this cup is as a therapy tool to help a child stop putting their tongue inside an open cup. You get these kids, they go to put the cup up to their mouth, they put their tongue inside instead of underneath. And when they're 2 years old, it's very hard to describe to them that you don't want to do that. So you can use a 360 cup. This is my own trick. And you can put stickers, or I like a textured sticker especially, on the outside. Make sure it's really on there well so it doesn't come off in the child's mouth, so that the child gets some tactile feedback. They can't put their tongue inside the diaphragm of the 360. It won't work. So when they put their tongue underneath, they get this sensory input here from the textured sticker. Sometimes I'll just go to Michael's and I'll get some textured contact paper and I'll just punch out holes and make my own textured stickers. Press them on there pretty good so the kids get that feedback. And then you just start to move the sticker farther up toward the rim, and then you eventually take it off and the kids learn the motor pattern of tongue underneath. Then you go here, you can go back and forth if you want until eventually they've got the idea. It's the only reason I use a 360. So even in responsive feeding, I'll tell you guys a funny story. When I was writing responsive feeding during the pandemic, and this book had been on, like the manuscript had been on my desk for years. I just didn't have time to do it, but then hello pandemic. So let's write another book. So I wrote responsive feeding, and my editor I love her, but she doesn't have kids. And she sent back the first draft and she said, you forgot to mention the 360 cup. That's what all my friends use. Don't you want to mention that one? And I said, I sure do, because I don't want all your friends using that cup, but here's why. So I have a whole pictorial in that book, because a 360, if you've ever tried to drink from it yourself, it's got this really funky diaphragm in it. And what it does is it makes the kids drink by sucking really hard. And it's hard for me to demonstrate here, but I have a great reel on it on my Instagram. When they go to drink, they have to tighten up the muscles here and underneath the masseters, and they brace on it and they suck really, really hard. We don't want kids using those muscles and using their temporomandibular joint in that manner. These are not a good idea. Occasionally, okay, but I'm scared to death that if I tell parents that, they're just going to keep reaching for it. So I don't like these cups at all. That's one I will tell you. No, don't use these. So I think most therapists are on board with that one as well, not to use them.
Thank you. There was one question that I guess we passed over. This is from Kat. She just said, what would you recommend if a child just kind of throws the cup or pushes it away the minute that you try to pick it up?
Meaning, I'm assuming she means they're just throwing for the heck of it. It's not that they don't like the cup, it's that throwing is fun, or what do you think? Or feel free to clarify.
Yeah, yes, please, Kat, feel free to clarify. I'm thinking more that the child just doesn't want to drink from that particular cup, or I'm not sure.
And so the easiest and most efficient
she
way,
said throwing for the heck of it. Okay.
throwing for the heck of it, because
Yeah.
gravity, right? Yeah, this is something we talk a lot about in my courses. When I run into kids who have gotten a lot of attention naturally for throwing things, because how can you ignore it? You know, it's really tricky. The dog comes running in and all this attention over what just hit the floor. Cups open up and they splatter, and there's a lot of, oh my gosh, it's a big deal. So when kids have already been reinforced accidentally for the behavior of throwing a cup, what we want to do, similar to what I talked about earlier, is we want to teach them to do something else with it instead, so they get attention for doing the correct thing, which is the cup goes on a coaster, or the cup goes in a holder, whatever it happens to be. So I would use that same method that we were just talking about, but remember, you want to do it away from meal times. So you're going to treat it almost like you're teaching a skill, like teaching a child how to tie their shoelace. You're not going to teach a child how to tie their shoelace 3 minutes before you're trying to get in the car to go to school. You do it separately, same idea. So sit down with your child, make sure there's something really fun that's going to happen when they do what you ask them to do. It might be a silly face you make, it might be 10 seconds of a toy, it might be a high five or a fun song, whatever they love. And teach them that the cup goes here. So put a sticker on the table or the high chair tray, or you can use the indentation we talked about. I had a dad who, when I told him I needed a coaster on his table, true story, literally took a jelly jar lid and drilled it into his dining room table. And I was like, well, that's a little extreme. He goes, well, now that's where the cup's going to go. Like, it's never going to move. I said, okay. So I taught his daughter that the cup goes there. So the cup, let's see, what did I do with my coaster? Here we go. So the cup, you're going to teach them that just to take, they don't have to take a drink yet. Okay. Just pick up the cup goes here, high five, something fun happens. Let's do it again. Awesome. Here you go, baby. Yep, the cup goes there. You got it. Awesome. This is so great. Where's the cup go? Okay, let mommy try. The cup goes here. Teach them that game. Then when you sense that they're during a mealtime, that they're going to pitch the cup, then what you want to do is assume that they're not. So what I do is I say, yeah, the cup goes here. You're right. Awesome. And I get in there a little bit before they're about to pitch it. But what if they do pitch it? Here's what you do. Absolutely nothing. You don't notice it. If it opens up and milk goes all over the floor, put on your best Academy Award performance and do not notice that. And that will start to help fade that behavior. Now, if you're sitting there across from your child in the high chair, let's say, and the child's like, I want my cup, I want my cup. You're going to keep looking at the child, use your leg if you can, and just move that cup on the floor underneath the chair so they can't even see it. I do the same thing when kids throw spoons. When we really do our best to ignore an undesired behavior, I'm not talking about ignoring the child. I'm talking about ignoring what they had been getting attention for. It really will fade away with time, but you got to be smart about it. Don't fill the cup up all the way, right? In these situations. Make sure that the dog isn't going to run in and lap everything up, because that's very reinforcing. And teach the skill away from the mealtime table so that you can catch them being good, essentially, and putting the cup where it belongs. And the kids will start to seek out the attention for that. But if it's been going on for a while, it's going to take a little while to unlearn. So it does take a lot of patience.
So Kat was just saying, so you're using more than one cup if they drop that one, almost like you would with the spoon.
You could, Kat, you definitely could. You could come to the table with 3 cups if you wanted. But in this situation, I probably wouldn't. I would only bring 1 cup, but remember, you've already taught the skill away from the mealtime. So I suppose if I was going to have maybe 3 cups, I would do it when I was doing that skill building, that therapy session with them of this is where the cup goes, just for the ease of having plenty of supplies. But I don't think I'd bring 3 to the mealtime table, because once the cup is thrown, the cup's thrown. You just don't get the cup again until the next meal. I mean, I think that's a really easy thing for kids to pick up on is maybe I don't want to throw this cup. The harder thing is ignoring the big chaos after. And that's where that early teaching comes in. So, but again, parent patiently, because the longer a behavior has gone on, the harder it is to unlearn. And that's why from a very early age, when I'm first working with parents starting solids, I always tell them, I never pick up spoons. I never pick up spoons. I come to the table, as Kat said, with three. And then if they get pitched for whatever reason, sometimes they're just slippery, then we just eat with our fingers. I never pick them up.
Melanie, thank you so much. I'd like to be respectful of your time. I think Renata's internet cut out just now, but we're going to post this on our Facebook page and on YouTube. How can anyone who'd like to reach you contact you?
Well, thanks. My website is melaniepotock.com. It's also mymunchbug.com. I also call the kids I work with my little munchbugs. They're one and the same. And you can find me on Instagram and Facebook as well. Again, it's my munchbug, Melanie Potock. The best way to find all of my social media is to go to the homepage of my website, and you'll see all the icons right there, and you just click on them. But come and follow me on Instagram, and that's where I DM back and forth with therapists and parents. I don't take direct messages on Facebook simply because I'm so busy. It's just me. I don't have any employees, so I try to limit it to just Instagram. But I'd love to see everyone there and sign up for a course. I have 10 different video courses for you on pacifier weaning and bottle weaning and feeding development. Anxiety in children is something that I'm really interested in. We talk a lot about anxious eating, and I'm also available for parent and therapist coaching. So thanks so much. And all my books are there as well.
I was about to ask that. Thank you. This has been fantastic. I think somebody wrote incredible evening with an incredible speaker, and I second that. I'm just going to take just one quick minute to talk about upcoming events with Airway Circle. Tomorrow, we have the 4-hour live masterclass, which will be led by Robin Walsh and Lori Overland on OMDs and special populations. Also, please don't forget to register for Rebecca Clark's self-care extension course on massage and lymphatic drainage. If you're a member, that's going to be on Saturday, June 11th at 6. And next Thursday, May 26th, we have Dr. Daniel Clower, who's a dentist, TMJ, and sleep apnea specialist. He's going to be our Zoom guest next week. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming this evening. This was great. And I think it's going to be posted and available for those who couldn't make it tonight. And I think if you are a professional, a new parent, maybe an experienced parent, if such a thing exists, this would be great to hear and to consider and share possible. So thank you very much, everyone. I'd like to wish you all a good night. Thank you again, Melanie. Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.